Can a simple 15-kilometer test change the destiny of an entire team? What if that driver is Lewis Hamilton, and the car is the most revolutionary Ferrari in decades? Nothing in Fiorano that morning of January 23, 2026 seemed to indicate that a key moment in the recent history of Formula One was approaching. The sky over Maranello was covered in thick fog. The asphalt looked wet and temperatures barely exceeded 7 degrees. It was the type of conditions that usually turn a shakedown day into a mechanical procedure, more useful for checking that the systems are working than for drawing relevant conclusions. But that day was destined for something else. Because in the middle of that gray atmosphere, a red car, the SF26, and a driver dressed again in a Ferrari jumpsuit, marked the beginning of what could become a new era for the most iconic team in motorsport. Lewis Hamilton got into the Italian car for the first time, in what was not only his debut as a Ferrari driver, but also the practical presentation of one of the most radical technical projects ever conceived by the Scuderia. What should have been a simple mechanical validation was transformed, from the first round, into a declaration of intentions. It was not about testing top speeds or setting reference times, because the regulations limit this type of test to 15 kilometers, 5 symbolic laps on Ferrari's private track. But for those watching silently from the pit wall, what Hamilton showed was eye-opening. The way it handled the transition between active aerodynamic modes, alternating between corner mode and straight mode with a fluidity that seemed instinctive, left engineers stunned. The SF20SIXS front wing, designed to transform electronically, showed its ability to completely modify its profile in real time. From the outside, it looked as if the car was breathing. And the British pilot, without hesitation, knew how to activate those settings with surgical precision. On a wet track, with intermediate tires, without previous references, and in a completely new car, his control was absolute. But the most impressive thing was not the obvious technical gestures, but what did not happen. There were no brake locks, no oversteer. No system failed. The battery performed as it should, thermal management remained stable, and power delivery was consistent with what engineers expected. And that, in a car with completely renewed architecture, is almost a miracle. From the new energy recovery system designed to coexist with the demise of the MGUH to the communication between the chassis control modules and the hybrid power unit, everything responded with millimeter precision. It was a technical silence that sounded like victory in the control room. No one had to raise their voice to ask for explanations. No screen was dyed red. What for any team would be a decent start, for Ferrari it was a resounding validation of years of work under pressure. Hamilton, for his part, needed no words to demonstrate his connection to SF26. His body language as he got out of the car was enough. There was surprise in his gestures, but also a renewed confidence. And those who know him know that he is not an easy driver to impress. What he found in that car was not simply a work tool, it was a machine that responded to his style with an unexpected sensitivity. Although weather conditions limited the test's potential, Hamilton was able to draw immediate conclusions. He discussed with the engineers such specific details as the progression of lateral load on the rear axle during activation of straight-line mode, the stability of the steering wheel in mixed zones, and how the new mass distribution of the SF26 affected the turning point in low-speed corners. For the Maranello technicians, accustomed to years of frustration with drivers who questioned the concept more than explored it, this collaboration was pure gold. Because Hamilton did not arrive at Ferrari just hungry for victory. He arrived with the experience of having led winning developments at Mercedes. And that day at Fiorano, for the first time in a long time, Ferrari engineers saw a driver speak their language. Instead of limiting himself to giving his opinion, he contributed. Instead of pointing out errors, he proposed adjustments. The SF26 was not yet perfect, but for the first time, the team felt that it had real synergy between pilot and machine at its disposal. And it all started there, on the cold, gray asphalt of Fiorano, where a 41-year-old Englishman showed that he can still rewrite the rules of F1. This time dressed in red. At the core of the Ferrari SF26 beats a technological beast with a code name, Project 678. At first glance, the name could sound like another internal development number, one more label in the endless technical documents that populate Maranello. But behind that figure lies a revolution, a total break with the logic that has dominated Formula One for decades. And for Lewis Hamilton, who has seen multiple technological eras pass since his debut in 2007, what he found inside the compartment of the SF26 was more than an engine. It was a technical manifesto. A message in steel, efficiency and fire, designed not to compete, but to redefine what an F1 engine can be. Why steel? Why use heavier material in a sport where every gram counts? The answer is simple and brutal, because steel can withstand what aluminum cannot. At high temperatures and extreme pressures, aluminum begins to lose its shape, warp, crack, and requires engineers to operate within conservative limits. Steel, on the other hand, maintains its structural integrity, and that allows Ferrari to operate with radically more aggressive parameters, very high combustion pressures, more daring ignition advance curves, and internal temperatures that border the limits of what is legal. But the most impressive thing is not that they used steel but how they shaped it. Ferrari did not resort to solid blocks or traditional designs. They used additive manufacturing, 3D printing, with metal powder to build each head as if it were a living part. Inside, they are not solid blocks but structures with internal cavities designed with micrometric precision. Cooling channels that wind like arteries, internal reinforcements placed only where they are needed, lightened areas without compromising rigidity. Every cubic centimeter of the engine is optimized as if it were a biological cell. Strength where it is needed, lightness where it can be, and above all, thermal intelligence. This engineering was not just to surprise the FIA or its competitors. It was designed for a long-term war, 24 races a year, more than 15,000 explosions per minute, and only 4 engines allowed by regulations. It wasn't enough to be fast, you had to be resilient. And Ferrari found the solution in steel against all odds. The decision was so risky that many rivals believed it was misinformation, a smokescreen. But as soon as Hamilton and Leclerc accessed the first telemetry reports and simulation figures, they understood that they were facing something completely new. And they not only understood it, they felt it. In his first real interaction with the engine, Hamilton had access to a data that took his breath away, 48% thermal efficiency. A figure that, in any other context, would be considered science fiction. Most F1 teams barely exceed 45% or 46%. The difference may seem insignificant on paper, but on the track, it represents tenths per lap. Differences in energy consumption, recovery strategies, and power deployment. It's the difference between being able to attack in the final stretch of a race, or resigning yourself to defending. How does Project 678 achieve this figure? Thanks to a property of steel that, in this context, is pure gold, its low thermal conductivity. Instead of losing heat to the cylinder walls as happens with aluminum, steel maintains the internal temperature. And this allows more of the fuel's energy to be converted into useful mechanical work. Less waste, more oomph. It is a system designed to retain the fury within the engine, to contain the explosion in its purest form and channel it to the rear wheels with an efficiency that borders on the impossible. But perhaps the most interesting thing is not in the numbers, but in the human reaction. Hamilton, accustomed to seeing innovation from the other side of the paddock during his time at Mercedes, found in Ferrari something he had not seen before. A team willing to reinvent itself from the grassroots, without fear of breaking its own dogmas. Project 678 is not an evolution, it is a technical heresy transformed into a competitive advantage. And when a 7-time world champion recognizes it, not just with words, but with the twinkle in his eye when reviewing telemetry, you know something big is happening. What happened in Fiorano was only the initial spark of a much larger combustion. It was not just another day of tests. It was an internal watershed. A silent validation of decisions that many, even within Ferrari, considered too risky. But what turned on that January 23rd was not just an engine. It was a change of mentality. Fiorano was the point where ideas stopped being CAD projections and became palpable realities. Where simulations stopped being hypotheses and became trust. Ferrari, after years of chasing the giants, finally stopped looking up and started building something from within that could take the lead. In those 5 rounds, no points were won, but certainties were gained. Doubts that had been weighing on Maranello for years were dissolved. Ferrari had been oscillating between potential and frustration for more than a decade, always close, always promising, but rarely delivering. With the SF26 and Project 678, the team has not only built a promising car, you've built a platform that can scale. A coherent starting point from which to launch real offensives against the current elite of Formula One. And most importantly, he has found in Hamilton not only a media figure, but a true technical partner. A catalyst for change that did not adapt to what existed, but rather demanded something new, something better. That day in Fiorano, something was demonstrated that does not appear in the reports or telemetry. Ferrari regained confidence in its ability to innovate, not as a desperate act, but as a calculated choice. He allowed himself to think differently, take risks, and see how everything worked the first time. That kind of validation is rare in F1, and when it happens, it cannot be missed. Every second of perfect operation, Every parameter within the expected range, every aerodynamic activation without failure, was an affirmation. This project, although ambitious, is real. Is alive. It has an address. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.